I love making you believe what you get is what you see. But I'm so fake happy, I feel so fake happy. And I bet everybody here is just as insincere. We're all so fake happy, and I know fake happy.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm uploading this video a little bit late than what I intended to. I intended on uploading the video about a week after I uploaded my last one just to keep it consistent, but something popped up yesterday so I wasn't able to film or anything like that. So my bad. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about Jonelle Matthews. Jonelle Matthews was a 12-year-old girl who disappeared in Greeley, Colorado, where I'm originally from, on December 20th, 1984. She remained missing for 34 years until her remains were found on July 24, 2019 by construction workers putting in a new pipeline 15 miles away from her home. I decided to do this case because I hung out with my mom last week and we were talking about my channel. She suggested I do Jonelle Matthews, and I was surprised because I was like, oh crap, that's actually one of the cases I had looked into that happened in Greeley, and I was gonna ask her if she knew her because she was actually born right around the same time my mom was born and also my uncles. So I was really excited when she brought it up to me. She told me that my uncles actually went to school with her. That didn't surprise me because, like I said, they're born all around the same time. So that actually motivated me more to cover this case or to talk about this case, because that just blows my mind that my uncles actually knew and went to school with her. I guess I don't know if they actually knew her. I haven't asked them yet, but that's just crazy that they went to school with her during that time. Imagine that you're in middle school again. Think about the times, think about your surroundings, think about your friends, think about the things that you were thinking about. Could you imagine just one of your classmates disappearing and never coming back? Has that ever happened to you? That's never happened to me. But yeah, if that's ever happened to you, feel free to comment and let me know what happened, or send me an email, because I couldn't imagine going to school in middle school and then one of my classmates disappearing, and 34 years later they find the body. That would just blow my mind. Anyways, yeah, if that has happened to you, please let me know. That's why I decided to cover this case, because it kind of really hit home. One, I'm from Greeley, and two, my uncles actually went to school with her, so that's just crazy. If I do ever talk to my uncles, I will give you guys an update on how that went. Maybe just pin the comment on this video or something. So anyways, let me get into the story. The family consisted of Jonelle, her adoptive parents Jim and Gloria Matthews, and her older sister Jennifer. Her father was the principal at Platte Valley Elementary School in Kersey, Colorado. On the evening of December 20th, 1984, Jonelle was performing in a holiday concert at Intra-West Bank of Denver as a member of Greeley Franklin's middle school choir. So her family was actually not at the concert. Her dad was at a basketball game with the other daughter, and her mom was actually out of town with her sick father. At around 8:15 p.m., Jonelle got a ride from her friend named Deanna and her dad. At first, when I was looking at this, all of the articles never said who dropped her off, so I was like, did they ever investigate or get into who dropped her off? So in this article through Wikipedia, I did actually find that one of her friends, Deanne, and her dad had dropped her off. I haven't seen if they've questioned Deanne's father. I'm not trying to accuse anybody, but I just find it weird that I haven't found anything of them talking about if they've questioned Deanne's father. Because if you really think about it, whoever took Jonelle had to have known that she was home alone, and I'll tell you why here in a second. Shortly after 8:30 p.m., she actually answered a phone call for her father. I've heard different stories about who had called. I seen that it was a friend of Jonelle's dad, but he was a principal, and I also seen that it was actually a teacher who was calling in for the next day who was trying to get a hold of Jonelle's dad to let him know that she wasn't going to be in for her shift the next day. Therefore, Jonelle had took the message, and that's how they were able to validate that she actually got home. So I think because of that fact that they know that she answered the phone and took a message for her dad, maybe they assumed she for sure had got home, and it couldn't have been Deanne's father who did it because she showed up home. But did they ever think after he dropped her off, like, he knew that she was alone, right? So she did take a message for her dad. The phone call was actually the last known time that anybody has spoken to Jonelle. Her father arrived home at around 9:30 p.m. to find the garage door open, but no one was in the house. Although Jonelle's shoes and her shawl was by the heater in the family room, at a place that she often sat. I also read that she had like a little cushion or something like that she would sit in front of the TV, and it had been placed in front of the TV as if she was getting ready to watch TV and settle down. Her shoes were right by the heater, so I think she was about ready to start watching TV, and the TV was also left on. Jonelle's sister got home at around 10 p.m. and still hadn't seen her sister, so that's when the dad started to panic and called police. The police had arrived at around 10:15 p.m. and they did find footprints indicating that somebody was looking through the windows, but there were no signs of a struggle or forced entry. With the snow on the ground, Jonelle's father thought it would be unlikely that she would go far without her shoes. Several weeks after the disappearance, they put Jonelle's birth mother under surveillance. Her name was Terry Vieira Martinez. They did this without telling her that her daughter was missing. So this is even the sadder part. Jonelle knew that she was adopted, but she always had and wanted this desire to meet her birth mother, and she had expressed this to her adoptive parents before she had went missing. 10 years later, after Jonelle was declared legally dead, is when Gloria, her stepmother, had received a letter from Jonelle's birth mother stating that she wanted to reunite with her daughter. Adoptive parents, of course, were hesitant to tell her what happened. They were excited at the same time because that's something Jonelle always wanted, was to meet her actual birth mother. It was just kind of sad that her mom requested to do this after she's already been declared dead. What's even more sad is that the adoptive parents had to give her that news. Luckily, it didn't go wrong. I'm pretty sure the birth mom felt pretty sad because she gave her baby up to have a better life, and then this happened. Luckily, they became friends after giving Gloria that news. Years after Jonelle's disappearance, Jim and Gloria retired and moved to Costa Rica. Jonelle's older sister moved to Washington State and got married. After almost 35 years, some people working on a pipeline had discovered Jonelle's human remains around 4:50 p.m. Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. So just last year in July. It was about 15 miles southeast of Jonelle's home. Till this day, the Greeley Police Department has not released any information about her remains, so they haven't released any information on how she was killed or if they found any DNA, anything like that. It was said that they were going to do some research of who owned that land during the time of Jonelle's disappearance, but they haven't came out with that information either. So I'm pretty curious as to what they're going to come up with as far as that information goes. If anybody owned that land at that time, they had to have, right? If they're looking into that, somebody's had to have owned that land before. I wonder if they have anything to do with it. Sorry, I had to stop a little because they're throwing away the trash right now and being loud and rude. Could have done this, right? Who went inside Jonelle's home while her parents were away? Somebody had to have known that she was going to be home alone that night. I'm not too sure what her mom did for work. If she was a stay-at-home mom, Jonelle wouldn't be home alone every day, right? And at this time, Jonelle's mother was visiting her father who was ill out of town, so she wasn't around. The dad was at a basketball game with his other daughter and he wasn't around, and then she got dropped off by herself. So I'm kind of wondering if it was somebody who maybe lived around the neighborhood or just seen that she got dropped off. It had to, I feel like it was a crime of opportunity. I definitely think it's a crime of opportunity. I don't think it could have been anybody that knew her. September 13, 2019, the Greeley Police Department had announced a person of interest. This person was Steve Pankey.
Steve, S-T-E-V-E, Pankey, P as in Paul, A-N-K-E-Y.
All right, so Steve, why don't we just start from the beginning?
He was a former Greeley resident who ran for governor in Idaho in 2014 and in 2018. His home in Colorado was searched under warrant. Police had probable cause that Pankey had abducted and murdered that girl that night. Pankey also had been a youth pastor at the church that the Matthews family used to attend. Another reason why they were looking at Pankey is because Pankey and his wife only lived 2 miles away from the Matthews home. Police Commander Roy Smith has stated that Pankey said, quote, he had made repeated efforts to speak with detectives about the Matthews case. But after detectives traveled to Twin Falls, Idaho, Pankey didn't want to talk about it anymore. He's still being investigated for this death, obviously. I was looking at some of the interviews that he did because I came across like a 3-hour interview, like a phone interview with Pankey and this other YouTuber. And this YouTuber goes to explain that Pankey actually became a Patreon for this YouTuber's channel. This YouTuber, he actually does murder mysteries and true crime and stuff like that. And I think he does like other interviews. I don't know. I didn't really look at his channel. When he became a Patreon, he didn't know who Pankey was. He didn't know his involvement with the case. He didn't know that he was a person of interest until Pankey actually reached out to him to see if he could interview him because he's being investigated right now. I guess this is not the only time that Pankey has reached out to other YouTubers to try to get his word out, which I think is weird. So first it was the investigators that he kept trying to keep talking to, and then now he wants to talk to other YouTubers. You know what this reminds me of is Leticia Stout. How Leticia had kept wanting to do interviews, how she kept trying to put stuff out there on Facebook and stuff like that. She just talked too much and she got herself in trouble, and I feel that Steve Pankey is going to do the same thing. I don't know if he did this, but Steve Pankey kind of just made himself look weird. I hate to say it, but he did it to himself. So anyways, I was looking at these other interviews with Steve Pankey. I'll link them below in the description box if you want to look at those interviews, and I think you're definitely going to want to look at them because you know what I'm talking about when I say that his story doesn't make sense. So I just watched a little bit of the first part of an interview of his side of the story of what his involvement is in the Jonelle Williams case. So this is what he said. He said, on the night that Jonelle had went missing, he was at home with his wife and his 5-year-old boy. His truck was packed and ready to go because he was going to take a trip to California to visit his family in California for Christmas. That night, he claims he was outside to look at the snow to make sure that the snow wasn't in the way so that he could just leave right away in the morning. So he was out there looking at the snow, making sure it was clear. He had seen an unmarked police vehicle who like flashed their lights in his neighborhood where he was at by his house. He thought he was going to get harassed because Steve Pankey mentions a lot of his sexuality and how it's out there. Apparently he is gay. He has been harassed by police officers because of that. I'm not too sure. I didn't really look into it, but that's kind of what he just says, that he's known for being gay and that he thought it was just going to be another run-in with the police. But it wasn't just another run-in with the police. Apparently the police had flashed their lights and then just left. About 6 days later is when he says he discovered the disappearance of Jonelle Matthews. He said that he heard it on the radio. I believe on December 26th is when he arrived back home that night. On December 27th, his father-in-law had came over to his home. Now, he said that he was surprised because him and his father-in-law were not on speaking terms. Not anything major on why they were on speaking terms, but apparently they were on speaking terms because Pankey had owed him a lot of money, and that's the reason why they weren't talking, because Pankey had owed his father-in-law a lot of money. Pankey's father-in-law was a groundskeeper at a cemetery. He claims that a cop had came up to him and said that he needed a body to be buried in a casket, and it was going to look bad for Steve. He said that while he was having the conversation, he said, well, this is the weirdest conversation I ever had. He said, quote, I asked him, Are you wearing a wire for the police department or something? What's going on here? Why would you ask something like that? Why would you ask somebody if they're wearing a wire unless you're feeling like you're being investigated or you're paranoid about doing something? Why would you ask that? I don't get it. That interview was just weird, and he doesn't explain to why he felt like that guy was wearing a wire. Anyways, he continues on with the story, saying that after he had asked his father-in-law if he was wearing a wire, that his father-in-law said no and then just went away. That's it. That's all he says. What? I don't get it. Wouldn't something more have been said if somebody accuses you of wearing a wire unless you actually are wearing a wire? I don't know, just it doesn't make sense to me. So if you guys know anything about this, please feel free to leave a comment or to send an email on my Gmail, which will be linked in the description box. So anyways, he goes on and says that his father-in-law says no, and then after his father-in-law leaves, he calls his attorney. His attorney was actually out of the country during that time, so his attorney wasn't available. He says he then went outside to go look where the police were like flashing their lights to investigate what they were looking for to see if there was anything there, and he said that there was nothing there. So what I find weird is that during the interviews, he's kind of putting a lot of the blame on his father-in-law, or not blame, but he's kind of like shining the suspicion on his father-in-law. And then he goes back after he says all these things about his father-in-law that makes you think, or that he makes you want to think, oh, well, it's probably the father-in-law who did it. He goes and says, quote, "But I'm not saying my father-in-law said Jonelle Matthews' name that day or said anything about a child or man or woman or nobody." He goes on wanting to talk to police and investigators about how his father-in-law had gave him this information, but at the same time he's retracting and saying, but he didn't say anything about Jonelle or woman or anybody. He just said a body, that he needed to get rid of a body, and that it was during the time of the Jonelle Williams case. I thought that was weird, right? During the interview, he says, quote, and I tell you, quote, the only murder that was going on during that time was the Jonelle Matthews case. Nobody knew that she was murdered until last year. So why did he say that? And then he corrects himself and he goes, or missing persons case. And then if you watch the video, I feel like he just he stumbles upon his words, and then he tries to recollect himself because he takes a few moments, and I think at that point he realizes that he said murder instead of missing persons case. So Pinky finally gets a hold of his attorney, tells his attorney that he may have some information about Jonelle Matthews and doesn't know what to do with it. He said that his attorney was pretty annoyed because he owed him a lot of money, and so he just told him that the only thing that he would be worried about is obstruction of justice. And then he hung up the phone and tried to get him off right away. So he thanked him, whatever, and then went about his day and continue on with that lawyer, obviously because he owed him a lot of money. After his lawyer had told him that the only thing that he'd be concerned about would be obstruction of justice, he then contacted the Fort Collins FBI. He contacts the Fort Collins FBI because he says he's not comfortable with the Greeley Police Department. And I could definitely understand that growing up there. Like I said, the Greeley Police Department, I don't have anything good to say about them from my experience. I could definitely see how he wouldn't want to talk to the Greeley Police if he's had past run-ins with them, because the Greeley Police Department are kind of dicks. So anyways, he gets in contact with the Fort Collins FBI, and he tells them that he's trying to avoid an obstruction of justice charge. The FBI agent that he had talked to had said, let's meet up somewhere. They agreed to meet up at the Greeley Police Department. He tells him the story, the reason that he doesn't want to talk to the Greeley Police Department. What got me mad is that during the interview, Pinky claims that the police department had asked him, did your father-in-law know anything about Jonelle's older friends? Did this have to do anything with drug dealing? Know anybody who might have not liked her? Why would they ask him these questions? He doesn't know her, first of all, supposedly, right? He doesn't know her, so why would he know if she has any enemies? I don't know, that was weird. Maybe they were asking him because of his father-in-law who had information about that. But did they ever question his father-in-law? I don't know about that yet. I think Pinky even says that he doesn't even know if his father-in-law has been questioned or not. So, I don't know. I feel like if they haven't questioned him, they obviously don't feel like it's him, or because it's the Greeley Police Department, they obviously don't want to do anything and aren't doing anything with that information. I mean, take a look at the Halia Williams case. That hasn't been solved either. Supposedly they have a suspect. They think they know who it is, but it's been 2 years since they said that and nothing has came across it yet. Last year they found the remains of Jonelle Williams and nothing has came across it yet. Like, I don't understand the Greeley Police Department. Anyways, I just wanted to do this case because it was super close to me. I wanted it to come from somebody who has actually lived in Greeley, Colorado. I was born and raised there. My mom was there most of her life. My other family has been there most of their life. So I just wanted this case to actually come from me because I came from Colorado. I feel like this case has been neglected. I haven't heard anything from the Greeley police, but I just hope they find out who it actually is. Even though the family has came out and said that they're just happy that they found the body and they don't even care who did it anymore. I could definitely understand that because seeing somebody is hard, but to not know where they went, I could only imagine is harder. So just wanting that closure of wanting to bury their body and put them at rest, I can understand that that's all you want. I think they deserve more than that, and I think they deserve to know who did it, and I think that person, whoever did it, deserves to go to jail. How can they just take an 11-year-old like that out of their home and do something so horrible? I mean, we don't even know what they did to her yet, but they found her in the ground, and that's just knowing that is already sad on its own. It's just so sad. Let me know what you think. If you guys have any more information about it, let me know. If your parents, ask your parents if they know Jonelle Matthews. They might know her. Jonelle was born in the 70s, so if your parents were born at around that time, ask them. They might know her. So yeah, if you grew up in Greeley, ask your parents if they were born around the 70s, if they knew Jonelle Matthews. Ask them if they even know that her body was found last year. So yeah, let me know what you think. Tell me if you do ask your parents if they do or do not know her. Let me know what you want for the next video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. They believe they have probable cause that